In Hollywood, the spotlight never dims, and neither does the pressure to stay forever young. For some male stars, that pressure led to drastic choices. Once known for their rugged charm and natural aging, these men have emerged with faces so transformed they're nearly unrecognizable. In this video, we dive deeper into the shocking makeovers of male celebrities who stunned fans with their dramatic plastic surgeries. Whether you see improvement or mourn the loss of their original look, these before and after reveals will leave you speechless, especially if you remember them at their peak. Simon Cowell, a face that sparked a conversation about aging, masculinity, and self-acceptance. When Simon Cowell first burst onto American screens in the early 2000s, he was the unapologetic truth-teller of American Idol, gruff, blunt, and refreshingly unfiltered. His rugged, no-frills appearance perfectly matched his tough-love persona. He didn't care about looking polished, and that rawness became part of his charm. But by 2008, fans started noticing something different. His famously stern expression softened, his skin looked smoother, and whispers of Botox turned into headlines. Cowell didn't shy away from the rumors. "Nowadays, every man I know has tried it," he admitted, giving voice to a growing shift in how men, especially those in the spotlight, approach aging. As he entered his 50s, the changes became more dramatic. Speculation swirled. Had he undergone a facelift? Eyelid surgery? A neck lift? Then came a serious wake-up call in 2017, when a fall down the stairs forced him to reevaluate everything. Cowell changed his diet, cut out red meat and alcohol, and leaned into a healthier lifestyle. Along with wellness came more refined beauty choices, like the subtle silhouette soft lift, which he openly endorsed. But by 2022, even Cowell admitted things had gone too far. The man in the mirror no longer looked familiar. "I didn't recognize myself," he confessed, a rare moment of vulnerability that struck a chord with fans of all ages. It wasn't just about cosmetic treatments, it was about the deeper, human fear of losing oneself while trying to hold on to youth. In that moment, Cowell became more than a celebrity with a changing face. He became a mirror for an entire generation wrestling with the same insecurities. His journey, from denial to self-awareness, offered something surprisingly powerful: permission to let go of the illusion of perfection. For many baby boomers and Gen X viewers, his story feels personal. It reminds us that aging isn't a failure, it's a privilege. And sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is accept who you are, lines and all. By speaking out, Cowell turned his transformation into something bigger, a conversation about confidence, vulnerability, and aging with dignity. Kirk Douglas wasn't just a Hollywood legend, he was a pioneer who dared to age on his own terms. Best known for commanding roles in Spartacus and Paths of Glory, Douglas carved his place in cinematic history with a face full of grit, emotion, and raw power. But as he neared 60 in the mid-1970s, he made a choice that few leading men dared to admit. He turned to plastic surgery. Not out of vanity, but to preserve the very expressions that made him unforgettable. In an industry obsessed with youth, Douglas wasn't trying to look younger, he was fighting to keep his intensity alive. His first facelift refined his jawline and tightened his neck, keeping him sharp on camera without scrubbing away the story written on his face. Over the next 2 decades, subtle enhancements, brow lifts, eyelid surgery, helped him stay camera-ready while still exuding the rugged elegance his fans adored. Unlike many of his peers, Douglas never tried to hide it. In a 1988 interview, he said bluntly, "Everybody does it. I'm just more open about it than most." That kind of honesty was unheard of back then. At a time when male cosmetic procedures were whispered about in back rooms, Douglas spoke out loud. His openness shattered taboos and quietly gave older men permission to care for themselves without shame. Even his son, Michael Douglas, once said his father was always ahead of his time, unafraid to use new tools to stay relevant in a constantly evolving Hollywood. And while critics later noticed signs of more obvious work by the 1990s, for millions of fans, those changes never erased his legacy. They saw a man committed to his craft, doing what he had to do to keep performing with passion and presence. Dr. Stephen Hufflin, one of the most respected surgeons of that era, praised Douglas's early procedures as subtle, smart, and skillfully done. But the conversation didn't stop there. Douglas's journey sparked broader questions. How far is too far? Where do we draw the line between enhancement and erasure? Still, Kirk Douglas never let aging define him. He redefined it. He took control of the mirror, the camera, and the public's expectations, and in doing so, gave a generation of men permission to age with grace, grit, and unapologetic self-awareness. His legacy isn't just etched in film reels, it lives on in every man who now dares to age out loud. Igor and Gritska Bogdanov, once celebrated as the brilliant twin brothers of 1970s French sci-fi television, would later be remembered not for their intellect, but for the shocking metamorphosis of their faces. Back in the day, they captivated audiences with their sharp minds, charismatic presence, and striking good looks, square jaws, defined cheekbones, and flawless symmetry. But over the years, that charm gave way to a transformation so extreme, it left fans stunned and the world asking, what drives someone, especially men so rooted in science and intellect, to push the boundaries of cosmetic change so far? By the late 1990s, their features began to shift. What started as subtle tweaks soon became dramatic alterations: oversized cheekbones, swollen lips, unnaturally long chins. Their appearance turned almost otherworldly, sculpted, and surreal. Yet despite the obvious changes, the Bogdanov brothers insisted they'd never had plastic surgery. Instead, they credited their evolving looks to futuristic science and experimental technology, statements that only deepened public intrigue and fueled even wilder speculation. By the early 2000s, their faces had taken on a puffy, stretched appearance that drew constant media attention and ridicule. Their public appearances, especially at high-profile events like the Cannes Film Festival, became moments of shock and curiosity. For longtime fans, it was heartbreaking to watch the once dashing twins morph into something unrecognizable. The shift from celebrated scholars to living internet memes sparked a much deeper conversation about identity, masculinity, and the psychological cost of chasing perfection. And yet, Igor and Gritska didn't hide from the spotlight. They laughed off the criticism, leaned into the spectacle, and turned their notoriety into something almost mythic. In the end, they became more than just cautionary tales. They became symbols. Symbols of fame, of vanity, of science pushed too far, and of the haunting question: when do we stop trying to improve ourselves and start losing who we are? Mickey Rourke, once the smoldering heartthrob of the 1980s, has lived a life so raw, so turbulent, it's practically a movie in itself. Boomers will remember him lighting up the screen in Diner, 1982, and seducing audiences in 9.5 Weeks, 1986, his chiseled jawline and brooding charisma making him an instant Hollywood icon. But unlike most leading men, Rourke didn't follow the expected path. In the early 90s, at the height of his fame, he walked away from acting and stepped into the brutal world of professional boxing. Between 1991 and 1994, the ring didn't just bruise his body, it changed the course of his life. Broken cheekbones, a shattered nose, and repeated facial trauma led to a string of reconstructive surgeries. And what began as medical necessity slowly evolved into a desperate attempt to reclaim what had been lost. Sadly, Rourke later admitted he trusted the wrong surgeon, and the results only deepened the damage. By the time he re-emerged in the 2000s, his face had become almost unrecognizable, a canvas of pain, resilience, and reinvention. Yet, in roles like Sin City, 2005, and The Wrestler, 2008, that weathered face told a deeper story. One of survival, of redemption. Rourke's real-life scars became part of the performance, offering something few actors dare to: unfiltered truth. What makes Mickey Rourke's journey resonate so deeply is his brutal honesty in a town that thrives on illusion. "My face tells a story," he once said. "It's not always beautiful, but it's honest." And that honesty hits home, especially for those who know life doesn't hand out clean slates. It leaves marks. Rourke's transformation is more than skin deep. It's a portrait of resilience, of learning the hard way, of falling and rising again. His scars aren't just reminders of what he's lost, they're symbols of everything he's survived. And in a world obsessed with perfection, that kind of raw authenticity is not only rare, It's unforgettable. If you saw Fulvia Pelgro walking down the street today, you might think you were looking at a real-life Barbie. With her plump lips, sculpted cheekbones, and polished style, the 56-year-old Italian woman turns heads, especially when she wears a necktie, a quiet, haunting echo of a life she left behind. But beneath that striking image lies a story far more powerful than appearances. A story of transformation, resilience, and a love that refused to break. Born as Fulvio in the deeply conservative town of Peveragno, Italy, Fulvia always knew she was different. By the time she was 15, the mirror had already become her enemy. Raised in a strict religious household, she buried her truth under layers of masculinity, owning guns, driving flashy sports cars, running a restaurant. To the outside world, she was the image of a man. But behind closed doors, in the shadows of night, she would dress in women's clothes and sneak off to gay bars, chasing a fleeting glimpse of the woman she truly was. Then, nearly 2 decades ago, Fulvia made a choice. She was done hiding. She sat down with her wife, Marissa DiMartino, and confessed her deepest truth, that she was a woman, and always had been. The revelation nearly broke their marriage. But after the initial shock, Marissa chose love. Not comfort, not ease. And with that, she stood beside Fulvia as the world turned its back on them. Together, they sold everything. The guns, the sports cars, their restaurant, even their dream home in France, to fund Fulvia's transformation. With Marissa's unwavering support, Fulvia poured nearly $80,000 into surgeries and procedures, 150 facial filler sessions, 4 breast augmentations, 2 liposuctions, laser hair removal, skin tightening, and a $30,000 butt lift. And she's not done yet, still chasing the full reflection of her truest self. But becoming Fulvia came at a cost. Her family disowned her. Society turned cold. She can no longer work, and they now live solely off Marissa's modest earnings as a holistic therapist. Yet through the loneliness and rejection, they've clung to each other, not as victims, but as soulmates bound by truth. Fulvia's journey isn't just about transformation. It's about what it really takes to live authentically in a world that demands conformity. It's about sacrifice, endurance, and love that doesn't flinch in the face of judgment. For older generations, her story may seem shocking. But look closer, and you'll see something timeless. The courage to be yourself, and the kind of love that doesn't let go when things get hard. Because in the end, Fulvia's greatest transformation wasn't physical. It was finally living without fear. Dennis Avner, known to the world as Stalking Cat, was no ordinary man. A Navy veteran and skilled computer programmer from Michigan, his journey defied every expectation. While his professional life was grounded in logic and technology, his personal path veered into something far more mysterious and unforgettable. Dennis wasn't chasing fame or rebellion. He was chasing identity. Inspired by a spiritual encounter with a Native American shaman and a profound belief in his ancestral connection to the Huron people, Dennis made a life-altering decision. He would transform himself into a cat, not metaphorically, but physically. He adopted the name Stalking Cat and began one of the most extreme body modification journeys ever recorded. It started when he was 23, with tattoos mimicking tiger-like stripes etched across his entire body. But tattoos were only the beginning. Over the years, he underwent 14 surgical procedures, facial implants to build a feline muzzle, nose reshaping, pointed ears, silicone injections in his cheeks and lips, and even whisker anchors embedded into his face. His teeth were filed to sharp points. He added a mechanical tail. Every detail brought him closer to his vision, not just in form, but in spirit. Despite his wild appearance, Dennis lived a quiet life in Nevada, working in the IT field and staying largely out of the spotlight until the media caught wind. From Larry King Live to Ripley's Believe It or Not, his story became a cultural phenomenon. In 2008, he earned a Guinness World Record for the most permanent body modifications to resemble an animal. To some, Dennis Avner's transformation seemed bizarre, even disturbing. But to him, it was sacred. It was about honoring a belief, embracing a deep inner truth, and expressing something the world couldn't see, until he made it visible. His story remains one of the most powerful and controversial examples of radical self-expression, a reminder that identity isn't always skin-deep, but sometimes it's exactly that. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, the prince of reinvention. His journey through cosmetic surgery became nearly as famous and as debated as his legendary music career. For fans who first fell in love with the bright-eyed boy from Gary, Indiana, watching his transformation over the decades felt like witnessing a completely different person emerge. The cherubic face that lit up the Jackson 5 stage slowly faded into something more sculpted, more mysterious, and, for many, more heartbreaking. It all reportedly began in the late 1970s, right after the explosive success of Off the Wall. His first known procedure was rhinoplasty, supposedly following a nose injury, but insiders say it ran deeper than that. Whispers of long-held insecurities haunted Jackson, and some even claim he was so unsure about going under the knife that he had his sister LaToya try it first. Once he saw her results, he stepped into the operating room and never looked back. From there, his appearance evolved dramatically. Multiple nose jobs, cheek implants, chin reshaping, eyelid lifts, even rumored brow work. Dr. Wallace Goodstein, who worked alongside Jackson's plastic surgeons, revealed that the superstar sometimes underwent multiple procedures in a single visit. The exact number? Unknown. But some believe he may have had dozens over the course of his life. And yet, Michael never publicly wavered. Despite the criticism, the headlines, and the whispers, he remained devoted to perfecting the image he saw in his mind. He once said, "To enjoy the fruits of my talent for myself alone would be selfish," a haunting glimpse into how deeply he felt the weight of his fame and the pressure to embody something more than human. Then came the changes to his skin. His tone visibly lightened over the years, which he attributed to vitiligo, a condition confirmed by autopsy, but still met with skepticism by the public who refused to separate myth from man. For older fans, his metamorphosis is both a cautionary tale and a heartbreaking reflection of what stardom can do to the soul. Yes, Michael Jackson left behind an unmatched musical legacy, but he also left behind a face that told a different story. A story of pain, perfectionism, and the silent price of being idolized by the world. Cait Jenner's story isn't just about transformation, it's about rebirth in full view of the world. When she came out as transgender in 2015, it didn't just make headlines, it cracked open a national conversation about identity, authenticity, and what it really means to grow into yourself, no matter your age. For many Americans who had cheered Bruce Jenner's gold medal triumph in the 1976 Olympics, the news was a shock. But for Caitlyn, it was liberation. Her transition was never about chasing beauty, it was about aligning her outer appearance with the woman she had always been inside. Through facial feminization surgery, breast augmentation, and gender confirmation procedures, Caitlyn took brave steps to finally live truthfully. And she didn't hide from the spotlight. Through her docuseries I Am Cait and Raw, revealing interviews, she invited millions into a world they barely understood, demystifying both the emotional toll and the medical process of transitioning. But her transformation didn't end there. Like many in the public eye, Caitlyn embraced cosmetic treatments, Botox, fillers, perhaps even a facelift, not to chase youth, but to maintain a sense of poise and self-assurance. In her memoir The Secrets of My Life, she openly shared how these enhancements helped her feel more at peace in her own skin. What makes Cait Jenner's journey so compelling isn't just the physical change, it's the fierce honesty behind it. In the face of criticism and media frenzy, she chose authenticity over approval, using her platform to advocate for dignity, understanding, and self-love. For older audiences, her story may come as a surprise. But it also serves as a powerful reminder, it's never too late to become who you truly are. Caitlyn's life proves that self-discovery doesn't expire with age, and that embracing your truth unapologetically is one of the most courageous acts a person can make. Kenny Rogers wasn't just a country music legend, he was a man who broke the mold in more ways than one. While many male celebrities of his time kept quiet about the pressures of aging, Kenny faced them head-on, with honesty and heart. In the early 1990s, as he stepped into his 50s, he began to notice his eyelids drooping, casting shadows over the eyes that had always connected so deeply with his audience. Rather than let it affect his presence on stage, he made a choice that many in showbiz make, but few ever admit: cosmetic surgery. What made Kenny different wasn't the surgery, it was the truth. In a 2006 interview, he didn't dodge the topic. He said plainly, "I've had quite a bit of cosmetic surgery. I've had eyelid surgery and a facelift." At the time, he was happy with the results, crediting the procedures for helping him stay camera-ready in an industry obsessed with youth. But as the years went on and more surgeries followed, his appearance changed in ways that drew mixed reactions from fans and critics. Still, Kenny stayed true to who he was: open, reflective, and unafraid to share the good with the not-so-good. In his memoir, he spoke candidly about the experience. Some results, he admitted, weren't exactly what he'd hoped for. But regret? That wasn't part of his story. Kenny understood something many don't. Aging under the spotlight is a balancing act between staying relevant and staying real. And through it all, he carried himself with a blend of grace, self-awareness, and just the right touch of humor. For older fans, his story hits home. Because it's not just about holding on to youth, it's about facing change with dignity. Kenny Rogers didn't pretend time hadn't touched him. He owned his journey, every step of it. And in a world where so many hide behind filters and silence, Kenny's honesty was a breath of fresh air. He reminded us that being authentic doesn't mean resisting change. It means accepting it, embracing it, and telling the truth anyway. That's the kind of legacy that goes far beyond the music. Carrot Top. In the early 90s, Scott "Carrot Top" Thompson exploded onto the comedy scene with his blazing red hair, manic energy, and a suitcase full of bizarre props that had audiences roaring. He was the quirky underdog, skinny, self-deprecating, and impossible to ignore. But as the spotlight grew hotter, so did the scrutiny. By the early 2000s, it wasn't his punchlines grabbing headlines, it was his face. Gone was the gangly redhead who joked about his own awkwardness. In his place stood a bulked-up, chiseled version of Carrot Top, with a face that seemed to spark more questions than laughs. What happened to the comedian we thought we knew? The transformation was impossible to ignore. Appearances on shows like The Tonight Show made the contrast stark. 1996 Carrot Top looked like a different person compared to the man on stage in 2006. His cheeks, brows, and eyes bore the unmistakable signs of cosmetic change, and speculation swirled like wildfire. Famed plastic surgeon Dr. Richard Fleming even weighed in publicly, suggesting procedures like eyelid lifts, facial fillers, and a brow lift may have been behind the drastic shift. But Carrot Top, ever the comic, deflected the rumors with a joke, a shrug, or a sly grin. He never offered real confirmation, only more curiosity. Some fans chalked it up to intense weight training or the natural effects of aging. Others whispered about the pressures of fame and the unforgiving demands of a youth-obsessed industry. Whatever the cause, Carrot Top's evolution sparked a larger conversation, one that goes far beyond Hollywood. In decades past, male comedians weren't expected to look like action stars. They thrived on being ordinary, even odd. But somewhere along the way, the rules changed. Carrot Top's story is more than a tabloid headline. It's a reflection of how deeply show business has blurred the line between comedy and cosmetic perfection. For older audiences, it's a startling reminder. The man once mocked for being too goofy may have felt forced to become someone else just to stay relevant. Whether his transformation was fueled by insecurity, ambition, or reinvention, one thing is clear. Behind the altered face is a performer wrestling with the same silent pressures many face in the public eye. In the end, Carrot Top didn't disappear, he evolved. And while his look may have changed, the heart of his story remains universal. The price of visibility in a world that's constantly judging the surface. Carrie Grant. The name alone conjures images of timeless elegance, impeccable charm, and effortless sophistication. But that polished, ageless look didn't just happen by chance. It was the result of careful curation, decades in the making. Born Archibald Leach in 1904, Grant knew early on that Hollywood didn't just reward talent, it demanded transformation. By the 1930s, Long before he became a screen icon, he began refining every aspect of his image. One of his earliest changes? A full dental overhaul. Paramount Studios documented the subtle yet crucial shift in 1932 as they prepared him to leave behind his vaudeville roots and step into the spotlight as a suave leading man. As the years rolled on, Grant defied the limits of time. Even in his 50s, he starred opposite women half his age, and never once looked out of place. By the late 1950s, whispers in Hollywood suggested he had undergone a discreet eyelid lift, a conservative blepharoplasty to reduce sagging without sacrificing a single ounce of his signature expression. Alfred Hitchcock, who directed him in some of cinema's greatest classics, once joked that Grant had clearly found the fountain of youth. But here's the secret. Cary Grant didn't try to look young. He aimed to look timeless. He never followed trends. He didn't reshape his face or chase the youth-obsessed pressures of fame. Instead, he refined what already worked: elegance, charm, and a graceful confidence that never went out of style. His close friend Katharine Hepburn once compared him to a vintage sports car, never flashy, always flawless, and cared for with exquisite attention to detail. Even today, dermatologists like Dr. Jessica Wu point to Grant as the gold standard for male aesthetics, proof that enhancement doesn't have to mean change. It's about preserving what makes you you, with subtlety and intention. Cary Grant's legacy is more than just film roles. He gave us a blueprint for aging with dignity, not by standing still, but by evolving with restraint. In a world obsessed with reinvention, he stood as a quiet rebel. And in doing so, he reminded us that sometimes, refinement speaks louder than reinvention. Robert Redford. With his sun-kissed charm and effortlessly cool demeanor, Robert Redford wasn't just a heartthrob. He was the symbol of rugged sophistication in the 1970s and 80s. From The Way We Were to All the President's Men, he brought to the screen a quiet masculinity that never screamed for attention but always commanded it. Yet behind that natural charisma was a man who navigated aging not with denial, but with grace and intention. Redford never made headlines for going under the knife, but he never ruled it out either. In a 2007 interview with The Telegraph, he offered a characteristically chill response. "I think a man has the right to do whatever he wants." A simple statement that spoke volumes, leaving the door open without giving anything away. By the late 80s, as he approached 50, subtle changes began to appear. The puffiness under his eyes seemed to ease. His gaze, still intense, had softened just enough. Then, in the early 90s, right around A River Runs Through It, fans noticed something else. A slightly sharper jawline, sparking quiet speculation about a possible facelift or skin tightening. But here's the thing, Redford never chased youth. He embraced time. Experts like Dr. Patricia Wexler suggest he may have opted for light, strategic touch-ups, perhaps a little Botox here, some gentle resurfacing there. Nothing drastic. Nothing obvious. Just a man choosing to age on his own terms. Unlike many of his peers, Redford never tried to freeze time. The crow's feet stayed. So did the sunspots and the creases carved by laughter, loss, and a life well lived. And somehow, they only made him more compelling. By the time he reached his 70s and 80s, Redford looked not just older, but richer, like a novel you want to reread. As critic Richard Roper once said, "There's a real grace in the way he looks now, capturing what fans had long admired, the ability to age with dignity and depth." In a town obsessed with staying young forever, Robert Redford offered something far more rare, the beauty of aging honestly. Thanks for watching Exposed Hollywood. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious.